On this week's More Perfect After Dark special, the gang talks about our favorite political books, I get some props for my TV comedy writing days, and then we talk about Kellyanne Conway's Oval Office Valley Girl pose, and we end on some infamous Republican sex scandals from the past. We hope you enjoy it. Rebecca raised the question of what political books have influenced us the most. So I'm going to let you go first, Rebecca. What are your favorite political books or the ones that have influenced you the most over the years?
The book I recommend to everybody who's interested in politics is Barney Frank's memoir, Frank. For one thing, he has a very interesting life. He was one of the first openly gay members of Congress, and that alone is a really interesting story. And his discussions of making incremental changes to U.S. policy that really benefit gay people is instructive. There are things that he did that you probably don't know. And it's really interesting to see the way that very small tweaks to the code can have a big impact on a lot of people. And the other thing he talks about that I think is really interesting is the struggle that all legislators deal with competing priorities. He talks about this particularly in lobbying for particular disease research. When you're sitting there with the cancer people in front of you, what do you say to the Alzheimer's people the next day? Because there's limited funds, and who wins? How do you make those choices? And I think that's something that's important to think about when you're dealing with your passion projects in politics. Another book that's really good is called When the Tea Party Came to Town, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the author. I'm so sorry. I should have looked this up. But it talks about the Tea Party wave in 2010, and a couple of the people that are really strongly profiled in it have gone on to have significant positions in the current administration. Kevin McCarthy is now the majority whip in the House of Representatives. And the other one, Mick Mulvaney, who is director of OMB, is somebody who was talked about in that book. And it talks about a lot of what's possible in Congress, what the Tea Party wanted to do versus what the establishment wanted to do. And, you see a lot of the players who are important now and how they interact with one another. And there are also a lot of really good John Dingell stories. And there's really nothing better if you're a congressional trivia nerd than a John Dingell story.
And Cliff, I'll go to you next. Do you have any favorites?
I'll admit, growing up, my favorite was always Animal Farm, which I
have to say, I thought you were going to say Animorphs. Does anyone know Animorphs? No?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. I remember Animorphs. I never actually read it. I also did enjoy, and this says everything you need to know about me. Two of my favorite political books going through middle school were Animal Farm and The Prince.
Oh my God, Cliff!
What?
Is that Machiavelli?
Yes, it is. Yeah. I also enjoyed All the King's Men, which, though fiction, was a wonderful. I forget what the term for novel with a key is, but it's basically a discussion of Huey Long's administration, and I would say that those, even though they're very old stuff, but they're not very current, did give me a lot of perspective at a very early age.
And Greg, what about you?
Okay, I've got three. Of course, What's the Matter with Kansas? If anyone has not read this by Thomas Frank, I'd let you borrow. I have an autographed copy. I think this really discusses, the concept of, people are poor, they're farmers, they're good people, and yet they still vote for Republicans. How does this happen? And it's a great book for someone like me who's a Democrat. And I'm like, how does this happen? But, and when I was younger, I'm going to say, it was a great say, like, well, this is why it happens. And, you're an ass if you don't try to understand other people. I love What's the Matter with Kansas. The other one, of course, Game Change by Halpern.
That's a good one.
Halpern and Heilman.
Oh, right. And the book that I think is most relevant, it's a series actually, to today, what's going on, and this was written decades ago, is it's a small science fiction book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And if you don't think this is political, it's about a guy who's a president who's completely out of control, and he's a figurehead. Yes, it's a sub-story, and he does these outrageous things only to draw attention away from the real power in the galaxy. Everyone's like, what's he talking about? But it's true. And I love that aspect that the president has 2 heads and 3 arms and does crazy, outrageous things and gets drunk and steals spaceships. And
is that
everyone's
Beetleborgs?
like, yes! And he does these crazy things and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But kind of like what we have now. And the real power is all these, like, I'm going to say, just shady guys behind him who are really controlling the government. And I'm not saying that's happening now, but conspiracy theory, it's happening now. So those are...
DJ, I'll go to you next. What are some of your favorites? And please keep it down to 20 or so.
No, actually, I will just go with 3. Jay Winnick's On the Brink in 1996, a story, just an inside account of the Reagan administration's foreign policy. It talks about the internecine battles within the civil service, the battles to get Reagan's ear and everything. And John Lewis Gaddis' 2 books on the Cold War, We Now Know and The Cold War, in addition to being very well documented and all that sort of stuff, he focuses on the fact that even in tyrannical societies, supposedly powerless people have the power to ensure that tyrannies spend so much time keeping their locals in line that they can't do the other things they need to do to keep themselves afloat. And he really does a very good job at explaining how not just, resistance movements of which we know about, but even normal folks living their everyday lives in ways that the regime doesn't want them to live them, forces the regime to expend energy it doesn't necessarily want to expend.
Okay, Helena?
One of my favorites is Truth Overruled, The Future of Marriage and Religious Freedom. It's by Ryan Anderson, who is at the Heritage Foundation. And he wrote it in response to Anthony Kennedy's majority opinion in Obergefell, the Supreme Court opinion that established marriage equality and same-sex marriage. And the book essentially argues that marriage is a human institution that came before the state and exists outside of the state, and its purpose was different than what American society uses marriage for now. That Americans today use marriage as a means to get emotional fulfillment, but that was not the reason that marriage was created. And it goes on to explain how people's religious freedoms have been impacted by the government. And it's a really interesting read. And then another one that I read pretty recently and enjoyed is The Making of a Salafi Muslim Woman, which is by Annabelle, I can't pronounce her last name, Inga, maybe. She's at Oxford. And it's absolutely fascinating, just really interesting. And I recommend it highly. It talks about, she kind of infiltrates a Salafi Muslim group and develops relationships with these women. I guess maybe infiltrate isn't the right word because I think they know what she's doing, but and explores how it is that women voluntarily come to a place where they choose to live out their faith in a way that seems oppressive and restrictive and anti-women to
others.
Interesting. Has anybody read any of those books that were mentioned? Other than the person that mentioned it?
Game Change.
I've read all of Cliff's, and
and I've definitely read Animal Farm. I'm adding The Making of a Salafi Muslim Woman.
I was gonna say I don't think anyone's read that one. Yeah.
I haven't read that one yet.
No, I'm fascinated. I actually love stories about people in religions other than my own. So I'm really excited to read that now.
Same.
One book I didn't mention that I kind of should have is Why Not Me by Al Franken before he was the senator, which is freaking hilarious if you haven't read it.
Oh, I love that. I was going to mention that one too.
So good. I need to reread that actually.
Didn't Mindy Kaling also write a book called Why Not Me? Okay.
Yes, she did, but Al Franken's is funnier. I've read them both.
Well, and I've actually got a copy of Lies and the Lying Liars That Tell Them.
Oh, that one's really good too. He's a really good writer.
Kevin, what about yourself?
I thought you'd never ask.
Kevin.
I was going to say, we know you can read and write, so.
Well, some of the ones that I really like were already mentioned, but I will mention a couple that on the pop side, the more fun reads. Obviously, everybody knows All the President's Men by Woodward and Bernstein. But if you want a real fun read The Final Days, also by Woodward and Bernstein, which is more of an inside look into those last several weeks, several months of the Nixon administration and what was happening inside the walls of the White House that very few people know about. It's a real fun read. Another fun read is The President's Club by Nancy Gibbs and Michael Duffy, which is billed as inside the world's most exclusive fraternity. And it has a lot of very fun anecdotes from presidents, about presidents, their favorite presidents, and also their favorite stories of their time in the White House. And then getting a little bit more esoteric, and this is one I could really recommend very highly, The Power Broker, about Robert Moses, the man who designed New York. It's written by Robert A. Cairo. And it is a fascinating look at how power is used in politics and to engineer social change. And I want to just give one example from that book. This is one of my favorite political stories of all time. When they were developing Long Island and Jones Beach was going to be a mecca for people in the city to get away on weekends, to go to the beach, to go to the sand, to have some time away from the hustle and bustle of urban life. But they were afraid that a certain type of people, black people, were going to also find their way to Jones Beach and ruin the experience for the mostly white upper class and middle class people of New York. So Moses, who designed many of the freeways, the highways, and a lot of the infrastructure of New York City, came up with a fascinating solution. He said, let's put overpasses over the Long Island Crossway, or the Long Island Thruway, and let's make those overpasses just low enough that mass transit buses cannot get through. Therefore, the people without cars, and remember we're talking about in the 1920s, the people who don't own cars will not be able to get there. And who were the people that didn't own cars at that time? Isn't that wonderfully diabolical?
Yeah, but no, that one has actually, of all the books I've heard here, been the highest on my reading list. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Cliff, when's your birthday?
Okay.
January 27th.
Oh, so you just turned 30. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a Gen Xer like us, Rebecca.
No. Well, you graduated from college a year ahead of me, apparently.
Yeah, I was class of 2009.
I'm college class of 95.
Okay.
No, you are not. That's crazy.
Well, I am once again older.
Oh my,
I'm
you
43.
look so young. You look so young.
you.
Oh my goodness.
Use of sunscreen, I'm telling you.
And I'm the class of 1994.
From college or high school?
Actually,
Elementary school?
Yeah, no, I was lying to you guys.
Yeah, we figured. I've seen pictures of you as a grown man in 1978. You posted them.
Yes.
When you were in SNL.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't on SNL in '78, but the mid '80s.
Those are the good years of SNL, the mid '80s.
But I must say, Kevin, I was such a fan of Night Court that I will say I liked you a whole lot before I ever met you.
Oh well, I'm sorry that I had to dilute that with my personality, but I'm glad you enjoyed the show. Thank you.
There was a great episode where they had to do, for whatever reason, they had to actually do the court in the daytime. And because the sun was up, Roz was a wonderful, cheerful, and fantastic person, and everyone was just completely weirded out. And they stayed just long enough for the sun to set, and the last line is Roz slamming somebody, and it's like, oh, good, all's right with the world.
You know who wrote that episode?
You did?
Was that you?
Yours truly.
Oh, that was a fantastic
Oh,
episode.
you're kidding.
I love that one.
I actually had the pleasure,
You know-
about a year later, I was flying across country on United Airlines, and they started playing, that's called Day Court. And they started
Day
playing
Court,
that episode before the movie. And I was so excited, I turned to the people next to me that I'd never even spoken to, and I said, I wrote that. They thought I was out of my mind.
I was going to say, did they think you were...
They probably thought you were nuts.
I need Trump to just chill for like 5 days.
I
So
think
that
they've taken his phone
luck
away
with
from
that.
him. He hasn't tweeted anything weird for a week.
Right. That's what I mean. I was waiting for the Orlando Garcia and Xavier Rodriguez tweet, with the gerrymandering. I was waiting for they're not capable of honestly determining whether or not there's racial bias in these districts.
So-called judges.
Exactly. I think you're right.
He's they took his phone away after that because that was bad.
Yeah. I think the wiretap was like the straw,
Kellyanne Conway stomped on the phone in her high heels.
No, I have a theory about her. I don't say it because I have no basis for this theory, like most of the things I think. I think she's like on the outs. I think she's in the outer.
She has been on the outs, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. Thank you.
Yeah. That's not to say she won't get back in.
No, but I think with the people who are actually running the administration, which is not Trump, I think she's, being given the Heisman, the stiff arm,
Yeah, no, they were keeping her off TV for a while because she kept saying things totally different than Sean Spicer.
Right.
See, but I think that she's not on the outs with Trump. I think that they're just keeping her off TV because they know she got too hot and a lot of the networks wouldn't book her. But I'll bet you that she's still in the mix and she's still advising Trump and he still likes her. That's my guess.
And she still has
I would agree with that.
Cell phone number. Yeah.
No, she has Oval Access. She can just walk right in.
Right. And sit right down and put her legs up.
That is nobody's fault but hers, what happened there. If she was nicer to reporters, those photographers would have said to her, "Hey, Kellyanne, sit down." And they wouldn't have taken the picture.
Yeah.
They would have given her the moment. Or the editors would have said, "Nope, we're not using this one." But you know what? She has dissed the wrong reporters, the wrong photographers, the wrong editors, and now they are willing to humiliate her.
I'm trying to think about what would have to happen for me to ever sit that way at work. Like it's one thing.
She's trying to get a photo. Like she was trying to get a shot.
I got a firm function and there's partners in the room and I've got my legs spread, with my heels tucked under. I mean, no.
With the president of Morehouse standing behind you.
Exactly.
And the president of Howard University standing behind you.
That's a level of I could not possibly care less that I can't have at this stage in my career, I don't know. Maybe she's it.
Do you guys remember when they took a picture of Obama and he had his feet up on the desk and everyone just lost their collective shit about it. And they're like, how dare he disgrace until of course someone found the picture of Reagan with his feet on the desk. And they're like, well, let's not think about that. But it's the same thing. People relax and people do these things and it's fine. But
I think it's different. But I remember the Obama with the feet on the desk.
I'm thinking of the silliness of the coffee salute.
Oh yeah, the coffee salute. Yeah,
I mean, do they remember that coffee salute from Fluffle about a year or two ago?
Right.
Yeah.
No, what was the coffee salute? Which one was that?
He saluted with coffee in his hand.
Obama was getting off a plane. He had a cup of coffee in his hand.
And he saluted with the hand.
Basically, the guy who was saluting couldn't drop the salute until it was returned.
Right. And so Obama just sort of did this with the coffee in his hand because his other hand was occupied. He couldn't switch the coffee. And it was one of those things that it would happen to anybody who's required to salute people. But, when there's 50,000 cameras doing this.
And they immediately came up with a picture of George W. Bush saluting with his dog in his hand. So,
oh, God, that's right. This is easy.
I'd forgotten that part.
Yes, that's conservatives awesome. Generally do.
This solution is going to the dogs.
Yeah, no, I mean, anytime you're in a position where there are a million cameras around you, something is going to happen, and you have to make friends with the photographers and the editors so they don't publish the shitty pictures. That's as simple as it goes.
I want to ask the two women here this. You're both, actually Helena's a little bit younger, but you're both in your 30s to maybe close to middle age.
I'm not in my 30s. Hey.
You're not? Oh, I didn't know.
I'm
Okay.
43. Neither of us are in our 30s.
The youngest one on the show.
I honestly don't know what age anybody is, except I know DJ.
I'm slow clapping that fiasco, Kevin.
But thank you for thinking I'm in my 30s. That's cute.
No, middle-aged. Unless he meant I was middle-aged, but
I'm middle-aged.
My point being that I could understand a younger woman doing what Kellyanne Conway does, because I've seen young women sit that way. Forget about the fact that it was in the Oval Office, which I think makes it particularly inappropriate. But just forgetting that for a moment, what woman who's 49 or 50 years old who's had 3 or 4 kids sits that way anymore? I mean, do they?
No, I don't think any woman older than like 16 sits that way.
Not in a dress that short.
That's what struck me.
No, that's a Britney Spears moment.
It
waiting
wasn't
to
the
happen
inappropriateness of it happening in the Oval Office. It was that this is the mother of 4 kids. I know she's 49 or 50 or older. And I don't know any women that age
that is a Playboy magazine pose. That is the pose that Roller Girl takes before Dirk Diggler saunters across the room.
Girl.
It's not dignified.
I love that reference. I love that fact that you just said that.
What I understand is that she was trying to get a picture of the assembled group for a quick social media send out. And Omarosa, of all people, was the one who told her to take the picture. And so she was like angling herself and then sat back. And it probably wasn't more than about 3 seconds that, she tried to picture.
Get up and walk behind the couch. I mean, that's I cannot possibly imagine a universe in which I am at a firm event and there's partners or there's clients or anyone. It doesn't matter who, the janitor's here, it doesn't matter. And I sit that way. It just, No. It wouldn't happen. I don't know.
I can see it happening in playgroup when you have like babies just learning to walk and you're all on the floor.
If you're alone in your house.
You know one thing we forgot to talk about? You know one thing we forgot to talk about Congressman Steve King.
No, we didn't forget to talk about him. We should never talk about him. He should be one of the, he who must not be named. He's awful.
What was his comment today that got him in even more trouble?
And I quote, "We can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies," unquote.
I love it. These people are so freaking racist. It's unbelievable.
Seeing as Steve King has never had a baby of his own. All babies are somebody else's baby to Steve King. He's nuts. Everyone knows he's nuts. His whole party dismisses him. They're like, "Ooh, Steve, yeah."
And yet,
I've heard stories. The way leadership talks about him.
He's a U.S. congressman.
Nobody bothered to primary him. Nobody Todd Aiken the guy. When Todd Aiken stuck his foot in his mouth, the entire Republican Party said, "Oh yeah, he's not with us."
Yeah, the first thought I had as far as Steve King goes was I was thinking of who was that congressman from Staten Island who was prone to making similarly outlandish remarks?
Peter King? Is it Peter King?
Peter King. That's who I mixed him up with.
He's from Nassau County, not Staten Island. And for some god-awful reason, he keeps getting reelected too.
I confabulated him with the one from Staten Island who had to resign as well.
Oh, Vito Fossella?
What did Fossella resign for?
Somehow
he had a love child.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, all I can think about is Chris Lee, the Craigslist congressman. I'm like forgetting.
No, that's
Didn't Vitter have a love child too?
No, Vitter just frequented prostitutes.
Okay.
Yeah, and diapers.
And
he
then
hired prostitutes to diaper him. It's getting late, and the snow is coming tomorrow night.
Yes, so let's call this a show.
Sounds good.
Along with my comments about Roller Girl and Dirk Diggler, that's going to be really intellectual.
Yes.
This shows my range.
Good night, everybody.
It'll be sophisticated as hell.
Good night. Good night.